Alright, so now you've seen me review Descent, and now why am I referring to that movie again? So, I think there is a few reasons why I'm going to refer to Descent again. And I'm going to do the sequel part. But there's not really much to say for that one. And I'll give you a few reasons later on. But I'm going to go for a mini review about The Descent for a little recap. So, pretty much, the endings pretty much confused the Americans because they got the version where the hallucination of Juno is in Sarah's car and pretty much she screams throughout the ending. But that was pretty much of a weak scare factor if I'm really had to be honest. But the UK version was a lot better because again, there is a true canon ending to this, in my opinion, for the UK version. But instead, one of the producers who did the first Descent followed the American ending instead and decided instead not to have a sequel. Instead of not to have a sequel within 4 years on for it to air, but for me, I didn't really think it was necessary to have the sequel in my opinion. The UK ending made way much sense because as soon as Sarah Carter, who's played by Shauna MacDonald, who fell off and lost concussion again for the third time, she soon sees a hallucination of a dead daughter for her birthday again for the third time again, and pretty much there will be so many screams of crawlers in the feeding nest, which is where Juno and Sarah, who were the only ones left in the cave. But to be honest, the UK ending made way more sense than the USA version, because I'll give you a little bit of a start, which the recap should not happen. So here we are, The Descent Part 2. The Apalacaba Mountains yet again. As soon as it starts with the non-canonical ending of the US version, but it somehow made it a little bit different because Sarah had no memory whatsoever, which is again played by Shauna MacDonald, which is good so far, good start. And then comes with a little bit of a mysterious old man, which is the mine archaeologist of the cave, which is played by some I don't know who actor who plays, but the character's name is Ed Oswald. Ed Oswald is the one who knows about a lot about the cave because he's the only one who has the true map for it. But Juno, on the other hand, if you look back where Juno had the archaeological book for the caverns, they don't really make sense because these books that Juno have, they don't even remotely guide her anywhere. Even though for Beth's anger, despite having a way out, to show that Juno wanted to claim the cave, so they can actually have a real name to claim it for themselves, until they knew there were blind crawlers that were actually that they were actually entering in their territory, because the crawlers' territory, if I am not mistaken, is where they climbed even though Beth wounded her hand. So pretty much, I think this is where the movie started to go much of a bad start. So anyway, Ed Oswald soon notices in his car a deer, which the deer didn't look that too harmed, but that's probably the wrong start in my opinion, because all deers always run away from a car, a horse, whatever. Mostly commonly female reindeers, because they don't have any self-defense, only except for a buck, which the male deers, because they use antler horns to use in self-defense to attack the ones that are harming. So a female deer makes no sense to me. Why doesn't it run? So we see Sarah traumatized, and she was escorted to the hospital by Ed, and meets with one guy, which is known as Deputy Vanes, who is a niece of Juno, and also the main character of the series, which is the second part, which is Elian Rios. So Elian Rios is the main character of the series, which means Sarah is the secondary protagonist of the series, because she has no recollection whatsoever until she had a traumatizing experience in that cave, and she was curious to see wherever her daughter was, but yet again, from no memory, she forgot that her daughter was actually dead when her husband Paul also died from the metal pipes from the first series. So that probably is logic, but it can be illogical at the same time as well, because despite she went inside that cave but no memory, that would be for someone's concussive side, I guess, but it can be for memory loss or something like that, but not completely. No, that would be through a different brain, or maybe it's just so many concussions. She may have 3 concussions in the film, but it still doesn't make sense to me how she got out from the non-canonical ending, which is beyond me, why the film started like that. So besides this animosity, Vanes wasn't happy that she was the only one who was there. So one of the doctors have taken a blood sample type of her blood stain, which matches the same blood type as Juno Kaplan, who will be featured again, who's played by Natalie Mendoza, who is still inside the cavern, who was wounded by Sarah. If we take the flashback from a bit, and things will go change, because despite she was wounded facing 10 crawlers, her fate was actually unknown. So we may never know, but Vanes still is convinced that Sarah has to do with this. And she has no memory of the people who went with her. And Rios and Vanes decide to have her to do the expedition, but instead when it comes to having more backup, such as the mini villains, which are Greg, Kath, and Dan, who are, in my opinion, the mini villains, which I'm gonna go, because they're pretty much linear characters, so they really have little to do with the film. And Ed, who is the Major again, but in my opinion, he's a little bit fishy. So he has the full map of the Apakar Mountains cave, but the bottom side, he doesn't even know the unexplored area there. But that unexplored area all the way down there, that was where the 6 girls went since the first film. But my question is, did Juno ever had that cave map to begin with? Or maybe she did abandon the book, but there was no explored detail of that cavern in North Carolina. That is my question. So we see Ed wink at the 6 people to wish them luck to rescue their captive. So after they see a corpse of Rebecca, who was mauled by crawlers when a rat went out of her corpse's mouth, which traumatized Sarah a bit, she soon realized Rebecca was mauled from her flashback, which took back from the first film that Rebecca was actually killed. And then, as soon as the traumatizations began again, and Vanes is still thinking that Sarah's responsible for Rebecca, Sarah soon in anger just kicks Vanes out of the way and makes a run for it, and the rest still look for her, and they enter in crawler territory, and Sarah soon finds the secluded spot, which is a similar one where she saw Holly was actually mauled to death, as you see her corpse. But you don't see her corpse that much, but you see her damaged camera. But the damaged camera was picked up by Dan. When Dan, Greg, and Kath saw the footage, which was recorded by Sarah, as soon as they react to the crawler eating up Polly's flesh when she had no longer lived, as soon as they heard sounds of crawlers, the crawlers were actually approaching to hunt them, and as soon as Kath was still staying still, Sarah quickly grabbed Rios, just to keep the silence away, keep the attention away from the crawlers, because they are blind crawlers, because they can only hear you by sound, and the sound from the sights, they will hunt you down. So besides from that and all that, after Dan was grabbed and mauled by 2 crawlers, Sarah grabs his supplies while the crawlers ignore her, and cutting to Vanes while he was isolated alone, and pretty much to see Juno, who actually rescued Vanes, which Juno was actually seeing her uncle, which is a blood relative. But she went completely insane. Despite her leg cut off, her trouser kit completely went off into some kind of shorts, because her trousers was completely ripped until those crawlers were no match for her insanity, as much as Sarah went insane despite attacking Juno despite Juno having an affair with her dead husband Paul, and Beth exposing Juno her secret truth, about her cheating or stealing the relationship, as you want to call it. And now, after Juno helps her uncle Vanes to escort the silence of death of these crawlers, later we see more of death. Later we see more the death of the crawlers soon enough, and another traumatization of Sarah happening again. But I want to skip it through again because majority of these plots are irrelevant. As soon as Holly's camera, yet again carried by Sarah, sees Juno, Juno assaults Sarah straight away for attacking her, making the escape without her, even though she didn't forgive Sarah, despite finding out her secrets already. And when Rios just saw that Sarah was about to get killed by Juno, when Rios tries to intervene, Juno, that it was Sarah's friend, quote friend, she was screaming, about to throw her pickaxe, which is bloodied by Sarah, to actually impale it to her eye on her left. And she did manage to avoid it, luckily, by a split. And still not happy seeing each other again, and much to these two arguing, even though losing every single kit. Sarah and Juno still argue, but still have to follow Juno's lead to find a way out, because she's the only person has experienced inside the cave than Sarah did when she went out. As Beth and Holly were never mentioned in the movie, which is a slight disappointment, but even though Sarah knows the truth, even though she has no memory of the truth, but Juno, on the other hand, knows everything about Sarah's problems, even how she remembers Sarah attacked her despite her secrets revealed by Beth. So Vanes, Rios, and Juno lead on to find a way out until they saw a corpse of Sam, who killed herself, along with the crawler who slitted her until the crawlers were killed by Sam before. And then, as soon as everyone took turns to swing in by the Sam's corpse, to make it out of the crawlers' feeding area of these things, everyone except for Greg falls over, along with 3 crawlers, but Katz, on the other hand, was screaming his name. But then she soon went into the lodge, either from the chasm or just probably got mauled by the female crawler. And as soon as then, later on, when Sarah was handcuffed by Deputy Vanes, Juno was ordered by Rios just to cut off the handcuffs from her uncle. So pretty much Juno wanted her uncle dead from the crawlers, other than Sarah, because because Vanes wanted Sarah dead. And then it pretty much worked until the 3 crawlers got Vanes, and then he went down into the chasm as well as Greg and Kath did. And now pretty much it was just only until Rios, Kaplan and Carter left, and they found the way out, but they were guarded by the majority of the crawlers and the main crawler, which is an alpha male crawler itself, who is a male. It is an actual big male, and the male one actually targets Juno because she was responsible for killing the crawlers herself. So while Juno deals with that, and Rios and Sarah got lucky to escape, to have time to escape, Sarah refuses to escape because the male can somehow manage to kill Juno in time until Sarah manages to support, but a little bit unfortunate for being too late, because she was gutted to death by getting her stomach ripped, and then later on it was soon Sarah avenged Juno from the alpha male crawler who was killed by Sarah herself. And then as soon as Juno remained speechless and she had no longer left to live as well, as much as Beth did, as she realizes the real death, the only 2 words she said to Sarah, despite 1, the canoeing, 2, the adventures, and 3, even more, to cause insanity against her, saying, "I'm sorry," until she dies. And then after Sarah realizing that she has nothing else to live, or anything that her friends, family died, she would rather sacrifice herself and no longer has anything else to live. She screams, so Rios decides to escape, and Sarah gets mauled instantly by the crawlers. About many of them, I would say about over 30 of them in the feeding area. And Rios has the same coloured look of survival, but not that much shown much as Sarah has. As soon as she was calling for backup, the main villain shows, and that is Ed Oswald. He spaded the main character Ellen Rios right down into the little hole. But the only question for me is on the ending. How did a crawler can expose himself all the way from the surface, even if he's blind, even though he don't hear sound? That's my question, because that ending made no sense to me. And to me, if she regains consciousness and her fate is unknown, what does that say for this film? So for me, this film seems a little bit of a downer, to be honest. The film is not really a good film compared to the first Descent. And the reason why that is because it's more about revenge for Vanes, as Sarah has no memory and she escaped, and wanting to get Juno out of the caves, and Sarah was traumatized for the rest of her life, and now she had no longer any reason to be alive anymore because she lost her family, she lost her friends, and she ultimately is the last person who got killed, but not Rios and not Ed, because these two are the only ones who were left alive. So there will be no Descent 3, even though despite a boring scare factor of a crawler going like this or something like that. I don't know. To me, out of 5 blood splats, I'm just gonna give it 1.5 blood splats out of 5. It's not really a good horror. It's just pretty much moderate, kind of like, but it's still gory regardless. I liked gore of Descent 2, but the plot makes no sense. The plot makes no sense whatsoever, as Rebecca's corpse is by a few feet away from the mining shaft where Ed pulled them down from. Where did that come from? Sam's corpse was still in the same position as the first film was, which is still logic, which is still good. Holly's corpse was not there because she's probably a skeleton, because the crawlers have already fed her to death. But Sarah managed to salvage her damaged camera until Juno knows that Holly's camera was taken by Sarah, and her insanity on Sarah, she didn't want to take the lust of revenge just to kill her, despite Sarah found Juno's secrets. And that is how I think it's one of the most strangest parts of this movie. The strangest part of this movie is Juno and Sarah still are at each other's throats. And that's how I pretty much don't like this film. That Juno nearly killed Sarah, and Sarah only damages Juno because she did not want to kill. She's not a killer. She however did a mercy kill on her friend because Juno murdered her. Because that's where her insanity began for the crawlers killing her friend Holly, who was her protege for the spelunking, caving, whatever. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps The Descent Part 2. Is it worth the watch? No. It's not.